Yep, perfect. Good afternoon, everybody. I am pleased to welcome you to the Building Bridges Conflict Resolution for Refugee Integration webinar presented by Allies for Refugee Integration. Before we dive into the informative content, I will start by introducing myself. I am Metin Gan, RE Project Coordinator, and I will be your host and guide throughout this webinar. Today, also my colleagues Maggie and Giselle are here, who have played an important role in preparing and promoting this webinar. They are here to support me in facilitating this webinar. Thank you, Giselle. Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you.
Now, let's explore the agenda for today's webinar. We will begin with an acknowledgement of the land on which we stand, and then we will cover some essential logistics and guidelines to ensure a smooth and engaging webinar experience. Later, I'll provide you with some background information about the RE project so you have a better understanding of our mission and goals. Then we will have a short survey. Following that, our featured speaker, Rola Mustafa, will share her expertise on conflict resolution and its role in refugee integration. Then you will have a chance to ask questions and engage with our speaker. Finally, we will conclude the webinar and provide some final thoughts and takeaways. Our agenda is packed with valuable insights and discussions, so let's get started with our land acknowledgement. This webinar is being hosted on the traditional territory of the Wet'nut, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee, and most recently the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nations. Takaronto, also known as Toronto, is now home to many Indigenous peoples, including First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. It's important us from the outset to express our solidarity with Indigenous communities across Turtle Island, who continue to experience colonial violence, including intersectional, gender-based violence against Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. Except for our Indigenous participants, we are all newcomers to this land. Whether your ancestors arrived here centuries ago from Europe, or were brought here forcibly from Africa, whether you arrived yesterday for a better life, or fled a war seeking refuge in this land, we are all newcomers compared to the First Nations, who have been cultivating this land for thousands of years. The subject of today's webinar is conflict resolution. Conflicts for sure have occurred on this land long before our arrival, and Indigenous people have developed their own ways to dealing with these conflicts. It's our responsibility to take the time to learn from their wisdom and incorporate their approaches into our personal and institutional relationships, alongside the values we brought with us when we arrived on this land. I hope this land acknowledgement serves a reminder of the profound history of this land and its Indigenous stewards as we explore conflict resolution for refugee integration together. Just a quick reminder for those who have just joined us, this meeting is being recorded. During the Q&A session, if you prefer not to have your questions recorded, you'll have two options. You can type your question in the chat and we will read it for you, or you can ask us to temporarily stop recording and we will resume after your question. We would love to see your faces, especially during the Q&A session. However, with so many participants, we kindly request that you mute yourself to ensure an interrupted presentation. OCASI does not tolerate racism, sexism, or xenophobia in these events, including virtual ones. We are committed to creating welcoming and respectful knowledge exchange platforms. We invite all participants to respect one another's values and opinions while sharing their experience and viewpoints. Now, let's take a moment to explore this image called the Wheel of Power and Privilege. I'll pause for some time to allow everyone to reflect on it. We all have privileges, and in many cases where there is a power imbalance, those on the outer layer of the circle may not feel comfortable expressing their opinions, even on the matters related to themselves. At OCASI, we actively challenge the oppression that arises from these power imbalances. As we discuss various topics today, I kindly request that we all be mindful when commenting on the opinions and experiences shared by other participants. Let's create an environment where everyone feels heard and respected. Additionally, please note that if you are not comfortable asking your questions in English, you are welcome to ask them in Kurdish and Turkish, the languages that I speak. Our speaker is fluent in Arabic, and my colleague Giselle speaks French and Spanish. So feel free to ask your questions in any of these 6 languages. We are here to ensure that language is not a barrier to participation. So, a bit about ARI. The ARI project began in 2018 in partnership with Refugee 613 with a clear focus on improving collaboration between settlement professionals and refugee sponsors to ensure that privately sponsored refugees receive the best possible support. During its first phase, ARI conducted comprehensive research and identified specific challenges in the sector. To address these challenges, ARI developed a two-dimensional strategy, intentional connection and knowledge exchange events. Throughout the intentional connection pilot projects, we established formal partnership between sponsors and settlement agencies. This allowed sponsors and refugees to be connected with a settlement worker both before and after their arrival. And through knowledge exchange pilots, we brought together sponsors, settlement agency workers, and refugees to organize virtual discussion and information sharing sessions. In 2021, ARI entered its second phase, which we refer to as ARI 2.0, and this phase is funded by IRCC until April 2025. In this phase of the project, we aim to continue to implement intentional connection and knowledge exchange practices. Through knowledge exchange events, we conduct roundtables and webinars to bring together settlement and sponsors communities to share info and build understanding. And through the Ambassador Agency Initiative, we aim to support SAs and SPOs partners to implement elements of ARI promising practices and continue to learn and share tools in order to increase the service received by privately sponsored refugees. In the first year of ARI's second phase, we hosted 4 knowledge exchange events and 1 roundtable. More than 140 people participated in these webinars and over 300 people watched them online after the events. During the sessions, we covered a range of essential topics, including strategies for securing affordable housing for sponsored refugees, exploring positive sponsor experiences, LGBTQIA plus private sponsorship, settlement services across Ontario, anti-racism and anti-oppression advocacy for refugees. We all recognize that housing remains one of the most significant challenges in the settlement sector. The situation has worsened since the last time we had the housing webinar. The housing issue affects all newcomers, settlement workers, sponsors, and sponsored refugees. That's why we are excited to announce that another housing webinar scheduled for December 13th. Please take a moment to mark your calendars as you will soon receive an invitation from Eventbrite. We hope to see all of you there. Furthermore, we value your input. If you have any suggestions for the housing webinar, please don't hesitate to contact me because we try to make these webinars as beneficial as possible for those actively assisting newcomers in finding affordable housing. In terms of intentional connection, ARI's objective during this phase is to recruit pairs of service providing organizations, or SPO, and sponsorship agreement holders, or SA, to establish a formal alliance between them. In the first year of this phase, 1 SPO and 1 SA, namely the Office of Ontario Refugee Support and Immigrant Services Kingston and area, joined forces and became ambassador agencies. With the support and guidance of ARI, these agencies collaborated to host various events, including a sponsor engagement event. This initiative led to several positive outcomes, including increased awareness and knowledge regarding the challenges faced by privately sponsored refugees in the region. It also improved connection and collaboration between these agencies. We are currently in the process of recruiting 2 more pairs of SAS and SPOs for the year 2023 and 2024. If you're a SA or SPO interested in becoming ambassador agencies, here's some essential details. The ambassador agency initiative spans approximately 6 months. For example, if you start in January 2024, it will continue until June 2024. There are certain requirements, including having a designated contact person for this initiative. You will need to collaborate closely with your partner organization, with my assistance, of course. During your tenure as an ambassador agency, you should participate in the ARIA Advisory Committee meeting that takes place every other month for sharing insights from your experience. You will engage in bi-weekly meetings with me for the first 2 months and then transition to monthly meetings after the first 2 months. Organizing a minimum of 2 joint events with your partner agency is also part of the initiative. As an ambassador agency, you will receive support from OCASI, including guidance in planning, activity assessment, and access to tools and resources. Additionally, there will be evaluation support with all elements evaluated by an external evaluator under our guidance. You will also have access to forums, mentorship opportunities with other agencies, and chances to showcase your leadership and share your learnings within the sector. While participating is voluntary, we want to acknowledge that you are committing some time and effort. We will offer you an honorarium for initial activities, and if there is potential coverage for your meeting expenses and speakers, honoraria for knowledge exchange sharing events also will be covered. To find out more about this opportunity, you can find the application form and the participation guide in the chat box. Giselle, please put the application form and the participation guide in the chat box. The application deadline is November 17th. If you are interested or have any questions, please reach out to me for more information. Share this with your networks, with SAS and SPOs. Okay, before I introduce our speaker, I would like to invite you to participate in a brief survey. You will find the survey link in the chat box. This is a less than 5-minute survey to help us to get to know those attending. Your answers are anonymous, and you can skip any questions that you do not wish to answer. Your input will help us to improve future webinars. Once you have completed the survey, I will introduce our speaker and leave the floor to her. Do we have survey in the chat box? Let me check.
Sorry, I think I don't have the access to share with everyone. Could you give me the address, the access, please?
All right, just check.
Did you get it?
I got it. Can everyone see it now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Great.
Giselle, if you go to meeting group chat, you will be able to share with everyone. And I will also appreciate if you could put the application for ambassador agency in the chat box while folks are doing the survey. Thank you, Giselle.
Is it okay? Okay, right.
Yeah, I think everybody can see them now. How are we doing with the survey? Should I give another minute or folks want to hear Rola? Thank you, Ms. Geen. All right, I see some people already completed that. Awesome. Oops. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you to those of you who participated in the survey. In today's webinar, we will delve into the crucial topic of conflict resolution. Conflict is a natural part of human interaction. Thus, when it comes to refugee integration and community building, understanding and effectively addressing conflict is essential for our work, especially. Today, we will explore what conflict means. We will try to identify common causes of conflict in the sector and discuss the best approaches to resolving these conflicts. The purpose of this webinar is to engage in a genuine process of exchanging knowledge. Overall, today's goal is to equip ourselves with valuable insight and practical strategies that can contribute to more harmonious and successful refugee integration efforts. We acknowledge that we have a limited time and this extensive subject cannot be covered in an hour-long webinar. However, the intention is to touch upon fundamental aspects and create a platform for you to exchange your knowledge and experiences. Okay, let's meet our speaker, Rola Mustafa. I think Rola is one of the best people to learn from when it comes to conflict resolution. I had the privilege of listening to her presentation on conflict resolution at OCASI conference just 2 weeks ago, I believe. And I am eagerly looking forward to her speech today. Rola's journey began in London, UK, where she pursued her academic interests by studying alternative dispute resolution as part of her LLM in international law at City University of London. Years later, she solidified her expertise by obtaining her accreditation in mediation from the Center for Effective Dispute Resolution. Rola has obtained certifications as a mediator from several Canadian institutes, including Family Mediation Canada and accreditation from ADR Institute of Canada. She highly values community involvement and dedicates her free time to volunteering with several organizations and boards. In response to the intercultural challenges observed while working with diverse communities in Canada, Rola pursued further studies in intercultural communication at the University of British Columbia. Her aim is to actively contribute to the advancement of justice, equity, and inclusion within Canadian society. As a global trainer in her field, Rola has conducted training sessions in both Arabic and English, sharing her invaluable insights in conflict resolution in various settings in Syria and Canada. With over 12 years of experience in human resources and project management, combined with her global MBA, she brings exceptional proficiency to every aspect of her work. Currently, she serves as a workplace fairness analyst at Workplace Fairness International, specializing in fostering inclusive and equitable workplaces. Without further ado, I will pass the floor to Rola for her presentation. Rola, please go ahead. The stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ethan, for the introduction, and thank you for the invite as well. Thank you everyone for being here today. I know it's after lunch, and some of you might be a little tired or sleepy, and you've been sitting maybe on your chair for hours. So hopefully you'll find this I won't say a presentation, it's just like a speech today, valuable to you, and hopefully it will add a little bit of some maybe techniques and skills. As Mitten said, it's like 1 hour, so we don't have a lot of time to speak. Just to let you know, last year we actually got funded from RCC, and we delivered 5 hours training in conflict resolution to refugee sponsors. So we train more than 410 sponsors. 3 hours for delivering the skills, and then 2 hours to practice the new skills. I know as adult education says, or principles say, for adult the best thing to learn is to practice. So we don't have chance to practice today, but I know RSTP is holding a webinar, not a webinar, actually training on conflict resolution. I'll be leading the training in, I think, on November 28th, if I'm not mistaken. So I hope to see some of you there, and let's dive deep into the presentation or the speech today. So just a little to tell you, I told you that I deliver training for refugee sponsors, and I also, have my own mediation firm where I actually do family mediation. I did family mediation for a lot of newcomers in Alberta when I was working for a settlement agency and also a social association organization. Also, I work or I do some work in place conflict resolution, including training, coaching, and assessing the whole culture of the organization. I want to ask every one of you before we start, what's your perception on conflict? So if you want to define conflict, so how we define it? Feel free to drop words or even sentences in the chat or unmute and let me know what you think. Let me see. I see someone. So it's differences, disagreement on a specific so many subjects. Okay. Disagreement, misunderstanding, differences in values, beliefs, and standards, disagreement between one or more parties, disagreement. That's true. It's actually a disagreement, and sometimes, we disagree with ourselves, and sometimes we say, oh, I have a conflict with my own self. So as opposing opinions, that's true. As Mitten say, it's a natural part of our human interaction. So whenever we come to interact with someone, we may agree or not agree on everything we are talking about. So conflict is, as a definition, it's actually a clash between individuals or groups, and it arises because of differences in thought processes. So each one is processing the information or the messages we are getting in a different way. Maybe each one of us or each one of who is part of the group has different attitudes, different understanding of the subject matter or the messages being shared, different interests. Each one of us, like priorities and interest needs are different. Also, the requirement of the work, because as a sponsor, I have a lot of work to do to resettle the refugees, whether it's like work with the refugees or with settlement agencies or with RCC. So probably different understanding of the requirements between a set of like group of 5 of refugee sponsors or settlement workers. Also the perceptions, how we perceive things. When messages are shared, so I am the one who sent the message, and probably, I think it's all about me. But honestly, like the studies shows, it's about the receiver of the message. So how they receive the message is more important. So when we are trying to talk to anyone, it's important to clarify and see how they perceived it, and if they perceived it right or not, and ask for any type of clarification. Maybe they need to clarify to me how they received it, and maybe I need to clarify more to them. So imagine yourself, and I was looking on the names and the organizations. I see many of you actually come from diverse communities. Probably some of you also are relatively new to Canada. I'm one of those who actually, right away after I arrived to Canada, started working with refugees and resettling refugees. So I know in the settlement sector, many of the workers are newcomers themselves. So, we have different ways of perceiving and receiving and communicating the messages. So clarity is very important. Probably I'll touch on that later, but for now, let's talk about sources of conflict. So I put them into different categories to just try, to simplify this thing for you today, and also because of the time constraint. But let me ask you, if before even probably I shouldn't have shared this slide for now, but what are the sources of conflict? Feel free to share, like if you want a source of conflict in general, or if you want to see about, the conflict between sponsors and refugees. Oh, okay, I see. Cultural differences, misunderstanding, uh, conversions of pathways, language barriers. Okay, which economies should I actually clarify? Oh, sorry, I jumped up. Okay, religious differences, lack of resources, entitlement, lack of financial resources, beliefs, that's true. Everything you are actually mentioning here, values, lack of independence, all of those are true. And we see them in most of the disputes that we actually go through. Um, I don't know how many of you are familiar with St. Stephen Community House. In 2016, when the Syrian newcomers arrived, they launched a program to actually resolve disputes between Syrian newcomers and Canadian sponsors. So I was one of the mediators who actually got to interact and with a lot of newcomers at that time, and also, to resolve many disputes between newcomers, Syrian newcomers, and Canadian sponsors. So most of the things that you are actually writing in the chats and the chat were actually happening. And when I'm actually going through the presentation, I would love to give you some examples and stories. So let's start about information. Probably if we talk about the sponsors themselves, they don't have enough information. Probably, not all the information they have are accurate. And also, maybe they don't have enough time. When I used to manage a SA in Edmonton, we actually were very, very understaffed. And I know many of the SAS had the same issue, and we relied on volunteers. So let's say our volunteers were acting like sponsors for us, but they didn't have all the information. So we had some refugees coming to us and complaining because not all the information that they wanted were there. Also, when you rely on volunteers from the community, they don't have all the resources, they don't have all the time. When they are able to do their job, when they have time, they do their job. If they don't have time, and we can't force them, the opposite, we thank them actually for their time. Even as group of five, I've seen so many groups of five, they have full-time work, they have family commitments, but they are doing what they can. But then sometimes that's what leads to conflicts. So when it comes to refugees, they are overwhelmed with information, so many information, probably they are not able to perceive everything accurately. Messages are just getting confused in their minds. Also, there is language barriers, as many of you mentioned. Also, the different ways of seeing things and interpreting things. Those are really huge. So let me get back. So, like with refugees, I know some of you mentioned here in the chat entitlement. So the thing that we tried many, I don't know if things changed, but when I managed the South for 4 years, we're always trying to ask RCC, to clarify things for the refugees before they arrive. They come to Canada and they have huge expectations, and they have, in their mind, they have a different picture of how their life will be going on here in Canada. So they get shocked, they get like frustrated, and most of the time they blame the sponsors because they don't know exactly. Also, because in their head they have a different ways of how things will go. Regardless of how much you explain to them, it's still something different in their mind because they already laid down the foundation for the pathway, as someone mentioned, the pathway of how they will be living in Canada. So probably it's hard to understand everything. And I've seen this conflict many times with like some refugees. And they also hear information from other refugees who probably came under different stream of sponsorship, and then they compare themselves with other refugees. The other thing could be the relationship. The sponsor sometimes may not have, the communication skills. Probably they don't have, I can see sometimes, that they miscommunicate for good, or I wouldn't say bad face, but because they have different agenda, so the miscommunication happen. Also, they have certain stereotypes or certain perception of the refugees, and that's like um, one of the main reason in my experience of conflicts between newcomers and sponsors. Um, the issue that all of us, or most of us, sometimes have a certain way of thinking of different groups of people, people who come maybe from Syria, or people who come from Africa or Afghanistan. We try to generalize, we try to just like um, paint all of them with the same brush, which leads to stereotyping. And we miss the point. So, I tell you an example. I always share that, in one of the refugee sponsor conflict that I've seen, for example, the way the sponsored oriented the refugees were very demeaning, was also like condescending. So the refugees were felt from the first day very belittled, very like devalued. One of the things, for example, that one of the sponsors told the refugee, um, make sure that you take shower every day, otherwise the people in the community would say what kind of people you brought to Canada. So that's, by itself just a proof, of like the misperception of, those refugees. Probably she thought they are dirty, they are, I don't know what was in her mind when she said that, but that actually after 3 months of this sponsorship, or after 3 months of the arrival of the refugees, the sponsorship breakdown, and it was really bad on the refugees themselves. Another thing is the strong emotions. Sometimes the sponsors, they actually have strong emotions towards the refugees. They want them to integrate very, very fast. They want them to learn everything about the Canadian culture, or they want them, to go to work right away, be independent right away. They push them so hard, which actually can cause pressure on the side of the refugees, which can sometimes, fire back or backlash against the sponsors themselves. Again, on the refugee side, I don't know how much, they can communicate in English. What's their communication background? How much actually they are comfortable to communicate, even if they are like if they are good in English, they have enough communication skills, but just being uprooted from their own community, being resettled here, it's like a big thing for them. So it affects their self-esteem. It affects, their ability to speak or to talk, or even, to convey the messages rightly. Again, the language level of context is something huge. I usually speak about it like in one slide when I deliver the training. In like across the globe, people communicate differently, and that's how they actually measure it based on the level of context. So some people actually clearly say what they have in their mind. They are very straightforward, they are very direct, and other people, they are very indirect. They can't tell what's exactly in their mind. They depend mostly, even when they are receiving messages, they depend on how you convey the message, the face of the person who is talking, the context, what happened, why this person is telling me this, in which occasion this has been said. So it's not straightforward even on the receiving of the messages, and that's what causes a conflict in many situations that I have seen between refugees and sponsors. Again, the refugees themselves may have some misperceptions and stereotyping um, of the Canadian culture, of the Canadian sponsors, of the Canadian life, which again, kind of clash with what the sponsor has in their mind. Refugees, will have also their own emotions, which most of the time they hide. Not everyone, is able to communicate emotions clearly. I'll tell you, for example, we have a lady or a girl who just arrived from Kenya, and after 2 days of arriving, she asked me why people here, like fathers and mothers and kids, they keep saying "I love you" or "take care," or it was strange for her because not every background is the same. Even for me, as a Syrian, I also, whenever new learned how to manage emotions or how to speak about our emotions, we just suppress them. That leads to also complication of the relationship. One of the advice or many advices that I can give in terms of communication actually is to try to communicate as much as you could with the newcomers. I know time is an issue, but in order to avoid conflict that can cost more time, cost more energy, more resources, effectiveness of communication relies on how much we communicate and on the clarity as well of the messages and the perceptions. Again, when you are communicating with newcomers, because of everything that I have said so far, it's important to ask them probably to explain to you what you have said, or ask them, to summarize, or you summarize and ask them, is that right? Did I get right? Did I get what you said right? Do you want to tell me what you are going to do tomorrow after you explain to them what they are supposed to do tomorrow? So ask for clarification. It's important. Again, if like there is miscommunication, if there is misunderstanding and they go angry, or if you feel even they are angry or they are sad, or ask them for the emotions and allow them to express their emotions. If they are angry, let them speak, let them vent out, and then let tell them, I see you are angry, I see you are upset, I see you are frustrated. Allow or mention the name of the emotions that you see that they are actually exhibiting. It's very important. That diffuses the emotions that they are going through. So if you acknowledge, they see that you understand them, they see you care about them, so that diffuses the anger, diffuses the escalation of the conflict. Then when both of you are actually calm and ready to talk, you can talk. But let them express emotions, and then you name the emotion and acknowledge the emotions. Also, if language is an issue, use an interpreter. It's very important. That help helps so much, especially if you see that there is misunderstanding. Nowadays, with the technology, we can use Google Translate, or we can just make sure, that the message is clearly received by the newcomers. Another source of conflict is values. People have different values, have different way of life and beliefs and different priorities. And, for the sponsors, usually, living in a very diverse community or diverse country can change your values. I don't mean like for the negative. I have changed a lot of the values that I had. Like I had so many beliefs when I was back home because I wasn't exposed to another type of beliefs, another types of values. But then interacting with people who have different values and belief made me feel like, or just see the other point of view, gave me like more perception. So I have different, probably even way of expressing these values. So that's also another thing, that someone who is fairly new here from a different background, their values are different. What matters to them is different. Way of life and belief are different priorities for them. For example, I can tell you, I have seen many sponsors actually interfering in, I know even refugees themselves, sometimes, um, they can interpret the values of the sponsor in probably in a negative way, and then take a step back and try to distance themselves. But I've seen, I just maybe sometimes talk about the sponsors more because they have, more obligations and more even legal responsibilities than the refugees. And because, for us, we have been here for many years as sponsors, so we have to help the newcomers. It's our responsibility to help them integrate, even if they are making mistakes, even, if I don't agree on their values, I don't agree on the way, they live their life, but that's who they are, and I'm here to support them. I'm here, to guide them. I'm not here to judge them or to blame them for anything that they believe in or any values that they are exhibiting. I've seen many sponsors, for example, force refugees to buy non-halal food, for example, because it's cheaper. And then, I've seen them blaming them for things like, very personal matters that don't even impact the sponsors themselves. In one of the cases that I've seen, they went to Edmonton where I was working, so I got the chance to support them there. They had been sponsored by Group 5, and then, the family took a decision that was very personal, and the sponsor didn't agree on. The refugees even, they didn't know if the sponsor will agree or not, because it's personal, it doesn't impact the sponsors, and that's their own life and that's their own belief. But the sponsors cut relation after like very few months of their, or even few weeks of the arrival of the refugees. They cut the relationship, they stopped sponsoring them, they stopped supporting them. And many of you would ask, they moved actually, because they had some support in Alberta. It was way cheaper for them because they had to work and provide for themselves. And I know many of you would say, why didn't they go to the government and complain? They could have got income support, but the thing, that they were like community members. They feel like, that they have helped them, they brought them here, so they have a sense of, that I forgot the word, the sense of, I literally, it just flew out of my mind, but they feel like grace. They have been graced by having those 5 people to support them, so they didn't want to put them down or complain about them or take the matter to the government. So their whole life changed, and months after, actually, they regret the move, but they didn't have a choice. So sponsors sometimes kind of play a huge role in supporting the integration of the refugee, in shaping the pathway, shaping the journey of the newcomers to Canada. So that's why I most of the time, talk about the sponsors. I know refugees also come with their own like package, and then they also probably, take some decision that probably impact the sponsorship. But then as a sponsor, we have, we are like a big brother or big sister. We have to support them, guide them without even, without cutting relationship or without blaming or judging them. So just speaking about cultures and values, because values come from culture. Also, if that's something I actually deliver usually in half an hour, but I put them all in one slide. So people are, or culture across the world are divided as collectivistic culture or individualistic culture. So there is big difference between both of them. So in collectivist people, they actually very interdependent. and very close to each other. That's why you see newcomers usually want to stay where their communities are. They value and prioritize group needs and goals. Loyalty to the group is very encouraged, and to the family as well. So if their interests and needs are different, as individuals are different from the group, whether it's a family, a community, or whoever, they will put the interest of the group at the beginning or at the first. Then their interest comes later. There is inequality in the relationship mostly, whether it's because of age, whether it's because of, you know, the level of education or level of wealth, or, you know, seniority at work. People usually talk most about or value most the group's achievements. But if you look at the individualistic, they are actually more in independence, and they are encouraged to be independent from early age. You see people who come from a collectivistic culture, when they come here, they get shocked, you know, that people can move and live alone after they hit 18 years of age. And also, you know, individual needs are actually more important than individual or than community groups or family needs. Sorry. Uniqueness is encouraged and always talked about it. Competition is high. There is a lot of competition, and there is a lot of also, you know, chances for competition. There is a tendency for equal privileges, even it doesn't exist all the time, but at least, you know, it happens, and, you know, it's acknowledged. Personal achievements are always talked about more than the community achievements or the group achievements. I just highlighted them very fast, but those are actually huge topics to talk about. There is, you know, the interest and the needs. So for the sponsors, they want to be independent. They want, or okay, they want the refugees to be independent, to assimilate in the society, and, you know, to live close to them, maybe to support them more. So it's more important than living within their own community. They want them to live close to them. While for the refugees, they want to live close to their own community. They want to keep their culture. That's very important, especially for their kids. They want to pass on their culture to their kids. There are different types of interest that we usually see in conflict. There is substantive interest that is related mostly to the result. So it could be resources, you know, it could be money, or, as I said, you know, housing, or other resources. It could be other interests, like emotional, you know, someone wants to save their face, or they want, you know, to feel respected or feel heard. Many times I've seen that in conflict, that, you know, just an apology could help resolve the whole conflict. So for refugees who are not valued, their sponsors are actually not respecting them, not respecting their culture. They may not care about any resources, any money, anything. They just want to feel valued. They want to feel, you know, that they are equal to the sponsors. For the sponsors, their interest could be, you know, or the settlement agencies, it could be, you know, that they want to report to the board what they are doing. They want to be fair. They want the procedures to be transparent. So differences in interest can definitely lead to a conflict. And there is, you know, another type of conflict, which is structural. So it could be inequality in power. And, you know, in the refugee sponsor relationship, there is inequality. The sponsor has resources, has money, languages, network, has been here for many years. So there is inequality in the relationship, a definite inequality. There is, you know, but the sponsor themselves may also have, as I said, limited time and resources, especially compared to the resources that the refugees thought that they will get before they arrived to Canada. There is physical or geographical factors that are hindering the relationship, hindering the communication. For refugees, it could be, as I said, low self-esteem. Refugees go through a lot of emotions because they have been uprooted from their community. They have been forced to go and live in another country, to leave their probably parents or leave their like loved ones, and then, you know, they came here with nothing. So they have a low self-esteem. They don't know maybe exactly how to express themselves. And also there is different perceptions of time. Time is a huge thing between, countries across the globe, because in many countries, you finish work maybe at 1, 2 p.m. and then you sit at home. There is nothing. You just like go visit family. Family comes visit you, or neighbors visit each other. While here, you have to be working all the time, and even on the weekend, you have to catch up on so many different errands that you have to run. And also, for refugees themselves, they have maybe limited knowledge of how to do things. So they require the support, maybe constant support of the sponsor or constant support of the settlement worker. But they don't know exactly, how much the settlement worker get in terms of time, in terms of resources, and probably they are always pushing, and they want more. Or some of you mentioned, the sense of entitlement, which sometimes, I explain to you why. Because in many countries, if you don't fight, you don't get anything. Even if, like, for example, I know when we're like at university, you want to take the bus. I wasn't feeling comfortable pushing to take the bus. So I would wait for 2, 3 hours until an empty bus comes. The same if you go to different countries, probably, you have to fight to get food, to fight to get attention. So they get to see, that's what they have to do. They have to fight and fight to get what they are entitled for. Uh, there are solutions. We don't have time now, but there are solutions which we probably later, like as refugee sponsors later on, we got to sit and just put some strategies around this problem that we had with so many refugees. But some of the ways for Mitten, am I late in terms of presentation? Because we wanted a lot of
I'm
time
really
for
enjoying your
questions.
speech, but yeah, I want to allow some time
Yes.
for folks to ask questions, but you can finish like this last two
Okay.
slides if you want. Then
Then,
we would
yeah.
like to hear from participants. Thank you. Sorry for
Okay.
interruption.
You're welcome. So another way, to mitigate the power imbalance, to rectify the issue of structural conflict or structural source of conflict, is communication. So always be curious, be present, try to ask questions, as many questions as you could, clarify, paraphrase, express yourself clearly. Ask them also, to express themselves, to clarify, and do not make unnecessary assumptions. And if they are making assumptions, help them. Help them to actually diffuse these assumptions that they have. Ask them, what made you think that, in Canada, all people do this? What made you think, that you will do this in school, or in school you'll get this? So ask them, guide them in order to understand the thing that they have to understand. Um, Also, have the courage to speak about your own needs, desire, and preferences. I know as a settlement worker or sponsor, you have a lot of conflicting needs and you have tight deadlines. So tell them, explain it clearly. And from the beginning, even before they actually complain about that, let them know how much time you have. And also, be patient, listen to them, understand their views, be empathetic towards what they are saying. The best way to be empathetic is through acknowledging, through, paraphrasing, summarizing, and these skills all like we teach in an hour, which like we will actually deeply talk about and explain in the RSTP webinar if you attend in November 28th. There are different ways of resolving conflict. One of them is resorting to power. So I am the sponsor, I have the authority, I can probably, even sometimes intimidate. And don't be surprised, but I have seen so many sponsors intimidating the refugees. And also, I understand where RCC launched their program, to kind of audit and see, how the integration of refugees is happening. Also, another approach to conflict could be through, reminding them of the laws and policies. For me, I actually prefer to explain the laws and policies even before any conflict, so everyone is clear and on the same page, and then we avoid having conflict. When conflict happens, then the best way to resolve it is through understanding each other's needs and interests. We call that integrative negotiation. We identify, or we try through communication, clear communication, to identify and address the needs that each one actually is wanting. And instead of focusing on the positions and demand, look what actually they have underneath these positions and demands. Why do they asking? Why are they asking for more money? Why are they asking for furniture? See what they want, and then from there you can generate many new ideas, and you can probably create a mutually beneficial solution, and both of you can win. I had a video that I wanted to share. Probably I'll share it with Mitten and then he can email it to you. You will see how actually this happened, how to negotiate and how to expand the pie and get to understand the underlying needs and interests. For now, I leave it for questions and answers, and thank you for being patient and listening to me.
Thank you, Rola, for sharing your invaluable insights with us. Now it's time for your questions and comments. You can ask questions in the chat box or raise your hand to speak. We encourage an open and respectful discussion. Please feel free to share your experience regarding conflicts in the sector without mentioning specific individuals or institutions, because, you know, if they're not here, they don't get to respond to that. But other than that, without mentioning any name of the individual or institution, please raise your hand, go ahead, ask your questions. The floor is yours. No questions? It's awesome. So nobody experienced any conflict. Somebody's asking how it is possible to
Yeah.
get in touch with Rola.
I'm actually active on LinkedIn, and you
Rola,
can
would you like to put your email address in the chat box as well?
yes, you know, just to avoid. Okay.
Yeah.
Here is my website, and you can also, you know, I'm very active on LinkedIn. If you like to send me messages on LinkedIn, send me messages. My email is on the website, so you can reach me through the website.
Okay, so we'll receive supporting presentation by email. So
Yes,
I think you
and
answered
I will
that.
also, you know, in the last slide, I will include the video that I wanted to share with you, so you all can like watch the video and learn from it.
Awesome. Barbara is asking, how do you address intimidation?
It depends who is actually doing the intimidation, but you know, we again in the training that we deliver, we actually talk about how to de-escalate conflict. So one of the way the conflict, or one of the way that causes, or the reason that causes conflict escalation is intimidation. So if I get intimidated, I would actually follow the strategy. We call that strategy claim. It stands for center yourself, acknowledge what you hear, listen for what's important, and then, you know, ask more question, and then move towards problem solving. Even like I feel so intimidated and they don't have the right. So one time, actually that was the first family we sponsored when we became SA. We had sponsored 10 before families, and we didn't know that RCC will send us the family in 1 month. So we had the problem that we weren't very well prepared, and again the refugees came with so many expectations. That was like before is a little different from the government support. So all their friends from the same village, they had been sponsored by the government, and that was like they were treated a little differently. So they came to us And I was like, I was the only one in the office, and they started shouting at me and accusing me of stealing the money that the government gave to me to sponsor them. And I was intimidated, of course, but I tried to calm myself. I understand what they are going through. I understand, that they had certain expectations and I understand as well that, probably the staff didn't do enough explanation for them. So again, to center yourself, if you have to calm yourself, one of the strategy is to remove yourself from the situation. So I welcomed them to the office. I asked them to sit in the office. I went to prepare coffee for them, and then I tried to calm myself before I respond. How many of us actually get or regret what we say when we are angry, when we just respond back? We will never be, happy or satisfied with what we say when we are actually just responding back in anger, or just being impulsive in the way we are responding. So calming ourselves is very important. Let them talk, acknowledge what they are saying, acknowledge the feelings that they are going through, and then ask them questions, then explain to them. And one day they'll come and they will actually know that they have made mistake. And they tell you, I've seen so many people in that situation, they apologize. When you deal with them nicely, when you acknowledge what they are going through, they will apologize because they intimidated you. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, Rola. Daphne, you want to go ahead and ask your question? Please unmute yourself.
Yes. So yeah, talking about the conflict, I just remember I'm the settlement worker volunteer in polycultural immigrants community services. So I just had some conflicts, like some refugees and newcomers. They always say I'm the agent. You have to provide me answer immediately. Oh, I'm very, my thing is very important rush. So, but I cannot provide those service as soon as possible to them, because I have different priority, different clients in front of them. So how can we solve those kind of conflicts?
Yeah. I know this is actually a big issue for settlement agencies and refugee sponsors, because all of them think, that they are priority. And as I said, it comes from something in their like background that you have to fight to get. Even, in refugee camps, I've seen so many documentaries how they actually have to fight to get the little thing that they are actually supposed to get. So, even in that training, again, we do talk about setting boundaries. So first, if they are just telling you without any, intimidation, without crossing a line, then explain your priority. As I said earlier, be open. Don't be scared at all, or don't even for a second think, that not to tell them exactly what you are going through. So I have priority for this and that. I have to do this. And, acknowledge first, if you acknowledge that you heard them and you are going to respond to them, but for now I have this and this priority. Let me take your contact information. I'll get back to you. And if I can't address your issue, I'll let a friend of mine or a colleague of mine respond to you. So acknowledging will calm them down. They will feel, and then talk about your priorities, then address the issue that they are going through, or just get their information and later on address it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I know, I know that probably they'll come back again and they will. But one of the thing, is always when you start working with, I don't know how your organizations work, but from the beginning, explain to the newcomers how much time you have for them, and explain to them, the stressful life in Canada, because it's very different from where they are coming from. I know of probably they are coming from Europe. It's a little bit similar, or probably, but if you are talking about refugees, they won't be coming from Europe, probably. So they will have a calm life. They will think, anytime you can just jump into their house. They'll think, that you can pick up the phone anytime they call. So from the beginning, lay down the foundation, lay down the ground rules. that will actually that will really help you in the future communication.
Thank you, Rola. We have another question. Do you have any advice for settlement workers when dealing with conflicts between refugee family members?
Okay, sure. So as a settlement worker, I think you have to act as a mediator here. I know probably you don't have all the skills because those skills, you know, need a few hours or probably a week to teach them. But probably, you know, just learning, you know, this a strategy of calming both of them, you know, calm both of them. Tell them that you are going to speak to both of them, you are going to listen to both of them. If it's very intense and you know you can't have both of them together in the same place, probably talking to each one of them, acknowledgement is very important. That's actually what diffuses diffuses emotions, so especially negative emotions. So calm them down, acknowledge what they are saying, ask a lot of questions, be very curious, understand the root cause of the problem, talk to both of them in the same manner and understand the root causes for both of them. And then, you know, I'll show you, you will watch the video later, so you will learn how, you know, to come up with maybe new ideas, generate new ways of thinking, and let them then sit together and be the one who actually champion the talk. If you have time, I don't know how much time you have because that's actually an issue, but if you have time, try to do that. And then, you know, you help them come up with the new ideas, you help them champion or create a settlement that's maybe win-win for both of them.
Thank you, Rola. Mohammed is asking how to address the intimidation on the refugees by the sponsor.
Okay. So it depends if the refugees themselves are actually dealing with it or the settlement worker. So do you want to learn as a settlement worker on how to address this?
I'm guessing,
Probably.
Mohammed, would you like to elaborate on it?
Thank you for this opportunity to have this question to be answered. Thank you so much. Is my sound clear? Or?
Yes.
Yeah. My question is how you know we have these kind of conflicts. You know, most of the time, you know, we think that the conflicts come from the newcomers or the refugees, but sometimes it's the opposite. So how to address something like that? If, for example, the refugee is complaining about being discriminated against or not taking his right or something like not respected the way he should be. So how to address something like that?
I don't know, Mitten, if you get it, but like the sound wasn't very clear for me.
Oh, sorry. Mohammed, you can type in the chat box. I think Mohammed was asking, yes, sometimes the conflict happens between refugees and settlement workers or refugees and sponsors, but sometimes it comes from sponsors. Intimidation comes from sponsors toward the refugees. What do we do in this situation? Mohammed, please correct me if I misunderstood it, or you can clarify your point in the chat box.
Okay. So, you know, I don't know if you have the ability to speak to the sponsors, if you are in contact with the sponsors and if you have good relationship with them, or even if you want to start the conversation and just like tell them, even if you don't have maybe that relationship with them. First, you have to actually get the permission from the refugees or the newcomers that you're gonna talk to the sponsors, explain to them, you know, that unless actually I don't know how the relationship between settlement worker and sponsors work, because for us we were like the sponsor and then they were the co-sponsors. So it's okay to actually explain to them that, you know, in a genuine way, in a nice way, because some of them, they don't know that they are actually being intimidating. They don't know that they are actually behaving in a patronized manner. So it's good if you explain to them nicely and let them know, you know, that probably you have a misconception, you have like a different interpretation of what's happening. It's okay to explain to them, that the refugees are not getting the right, maybe correct messages from you. Probably they are perceiving it in a negative way. And then explain to them, probably they have to change their attitude. I've seen many refugees, but also, it's good if you tell the refugees themselves to express their emotions to the sponsors. So have a genuine conversation if they are able to. Ask them, do you need an interpreter with you who can support you through this? Encourage them to be honest and to also express their needs and their worries, the experience of how they are receiving the messages. So it's okay for them if they can do it. If not, then probably you can help them with that, either through encouraging them, providing them. If it's too severe, to be honest with you, it could be, and that will take me to answer Najib's question. There are organizations that we actually trained. There are community organizations or community mediation organizations that we trained here in Ontario and in different parts across Canada. They can help with free mediation. I'll share the flyer that we created after we finished training them. There is all their informations. Anywhere in Ontario you live, you will find a organization that can help you with that. They can resolve the dispute between the refugees and the sponsor. But to be honest with you, I prefer if the refugee can start the conversation. I remember in one of the mediation we did between Syrian newcomer and Canadian sponsor, they actually said, I wish they told us. We didn't know. Why did they go to you right away? And they didn't tell us. I know it's also a cultural barrier. In some cultures, people don't speak face to face. They actually prefer to go to someone who can tell the other how they feel. It's kind of like, for me, because I actually was like that, then I changed. I feel it also depends on how you actually go, how your confidence is built in terms of communicating your emotions. So if they can't do it, they need a third person to do it for them. But if you encourage them probably and tell them it's okay, you can tell them how you feel, it's okay, they want maybe revenge, they want take it back on you, probably they will be open and happy to take the conversation themselves.
Thank you, Rola. Najib is asking, as a settlement worker, are we allowed to mediate among the newcomer, or shall we refer them to other organizations?
Okay, so that goes back to your organization approach. I don't know if they allow you, and because the SAH that I used to work with were a community social services association. So I did that many times. They had the skills and they did that, and they taught the front staff on how to mediate, because they had a lot of issues with the clients when they are coming to them to ask for services. It depends on your organization.
Also, Ari will have another roundtable on roles and responsibilities of SAHs and settlement workers. I know it sometimes creates confusion. Are we allowed to do this, or are we not allowed to do this? Like what IRCC says, what's the policy, what's SAH's agreement with IRCC? This could be confusing. And as Rola said, it usually depends on the institution that you are working for. What types of training you received. Sometimes you are allowed to, sometimes maybe you are not capable of. These things could increase suddenly if we are not capable of how to approach a conflict. Again, as I said, maybe roles and responsibilities of SAHs will clarify this point as well. Come and join us for that. Any other questions? We have around 10 minutes left. It doesn't have to be question. You can share your experience, comment on presentation. As I said, if you don't feel comfortable with recording, we can pause the recording for your question. Okay, Christine, sorry, I had to mute you. Okay,
I want to
think you were
always,
asking a question.
say something. I don't know if you
Yes, we are
listening.
3 in the office, so that's why I wanted just to say something concerning refugees. I've been working with Matthew House. Sorry. I've been
Go ahead,
working with
please.
Matthew House Refugee Center for 2 years before I came to MCC. Sometimes refugees, they have high expectations. And when we send them to settlement workers, they expect, they want settlement workers to do what they're expecting. Like they expect high standard of living, all those. So when the settlement workers try to explain to them the reality that this is what you're supposed to do, conflict starts there. So that is another thing that I've seen. So they were coming back to us to tell us, okay, no, that settlement worker is not doing anything because now they are telling the settlement worker to do this thing for them. So the high expectation enters refugees to be in conflict so much with settlement workers.
Very much true. Very much
Yeah.
true. Ask me about it. And that's why I'm saying, if you can, from the beginning, I don't know if you do orientation for your newcomers, but we used to do it. And that's when we developed actually the orientation session, because we saw how actually, we saw the huge expectations that they are coming with. And I tell you, we live in this part of the world. I don't know how many of you knows or have family in the other part of the world. Even if you tell them, about how hard living here is, tell them about, some financial constraints that we have, they don't exactly, or they get shocked when you tell them, because for them Canada is the dreamland. Everything you ask for you will get. And we have actually had this problem with so many refugees that we sponsored in the past. But then we had to explain every little thing to them from the beginning. Still, we will be faced with more expectations, but it's important to explain to them and try to relate. If you relate to your own experience, if you relate maybe to someone close to you experience, that makes it a little bit close and makes it more intimate, and not like very maybe as I said, condescending, or probably just explain your own experience, how you went through maybe the same thing when you came here, or someone someone who is related to you. Explain to them also that it's important to start learning. As a newcomer, your learning journey starts from day one. So you have to do things for you. I will explain to you how to do things, but you have to do it. And when you say it, and again, it depends on how you say it. When you say it to them and explain, it's for their own benefit. I know at the beginning maybe they won't be very happy, but then later on, I tell you, I met refugees, probably I met a few years ago, and now they tell me, now we know why our sponsor did that. They weren't happy at the beginning, but the sponsors wanted them to be independent and wanted them to learn. They weren't happy, but years after, now they know. And that's what's important. I know they won't probably, because, anyone feel uncomfortable when you push them out of their comfort zone. So, but we need to push them out of their comfort zone. It's for their own sake. Okay, you need strategies next time, which I also I know it was hard to talk, because strategy require actually more time.
Right. Yeah.
And more practice.
Thank you, Parisha, for your comments. Any last minute thoughts, questions, suggestions?
Mitten, are they good for if they attend on December or November 28th? I don't know.
I
I'm
think
not sure
28 is I think it's for RSCP's trained
okay.
participants. I think they received other courses. This is gonna be unique to them. I'm not sure about RSCP's program, but probably it will be more of a workshop other than knowledge exchange event.
Yeah, so we have 3 hours training, which we focus more on strategies, because when you speak about strategies, you have to practice. So we have more time. RSTP is doing that, championing that, but probably, as Metin said, it's actually for their own group. That's like closed group they have been maybe training. So it's part of their own like closed training. I'm happy to come anytime again. Like if I don't know, probably also you have other like strategies and other like topics to cover. But for me, reach out to me if you want. Now you have my website, my phone number, LinkedIn, and email is there. Reach out to me, and I'm happy to provide for more. May has something to say.
Awesome. We have May from RSCP. She's going to clarify.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rola. That was very informative, very helpful. Thank you, Metin. So for those who are interested to attend the training, the session that's organized by our STP, you're welcome to join our PD session that's happening on the 21st of November. Then you will be considered to be invited for Rola's session on the 28th. I will drop my email in the chat. Whoever is interested in attending the professional development session for settlement staff, frontline settlement staff on the November 21st, which is on next Tuesday, then you're welcome to email us, and we will send you the invite with the registration link for the session. Thank you.
Awesome. So there will be more focus on strategies. You will get a chance to practice. May, I will appreciate if you could put your contact in the chat box so folks can reach out to you.
I will put the general email, the centralized emails, spoconnect@rstp.ca. So in case I am not available, other colleagues from the team can address, and I will let them know of this. So you're welcome to send us an email. If you send the email today, I will respond to all of you and send you the link to register for the session of the 21st. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, May. Thank you for the clarification.
Welcome.
All right. Thank you all for joining us today. We hope you found this session helpful. A special thanks to our speaker, Rola, for sharing her expertise with us. If you have any questions, please get in touch with me at mgun@ocasi.org. I will put my email in the chat box in a minute. After this event, you will receive a short survey and the recording. I believe Rola will share her presentation. I'll send that to you. We greatly appreciate your feedback as it helps us to improve and better serve your needs in the future. Thank you for taking the time to share your thoughts with us. Have a good rest of the day. If there is any last minute thoughts, I will end the meeting. Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone.
Yeah, have a lovely day.
Thank you, Rola.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Rola.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.